I have a feeling I would.
All right, everybody, sorry for the delay. It is 5:46, and we'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to the regular board meeting of January 13th, 2025. Let's start with roll call.
Swanson. Here. Dave Smith. Here. Dominique Stewart. Here. Rachel Henderson.
Here.
Dale Dalkey. Amber Kirsty. Emily Hines. Here. Michelle Dupree. Here. Angela Wolf. Here.
Great, we have a quorum. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I appreciate people being here. The reason why we're having the remote meetings is so that we can get to every building and also provide board members an opportunity to see the buildings. We do recognize that this causes some issues for our ability to have a meeting and have people heard. There's plenty of seats up here if anybody wants to move closer so you can hear better. Same with the video, Steve. If you want to move it closer, it's up to you. Hopefully it'll come up okay. Board members, I think we'll all try to talk as loud as we can. Within a reasonable level of yelling, but that's why we're here tonight.
Thank you. And our mission statement: the school district of the Menomonie area, by embracing the unique needs and using the strengths of our diverse community, is dedicated to preparing all students to become lifelong learners, caring individuals, and responsible citizens. Do we have any proposed changes to the agenda order tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to recommendations and commendations. We have one this evening. Carly Husted is unable to be here tonight, but I will read here. Carly provided valuable assistance by interpreting for a deaf student from NHS during a dental appointment. The student was frightened of the dentist, but thanks to Carly's interpreting and the caring dental staff, the student could relax and have a positive experience. The student's parents are impressed with Carly's dedication. She consistently goes above and beyond her job duties and has become one of the students' trusted adults at school. So thank you, Carly. All right, next up we have our highlight on use.
Yeah, some board members, please, if you have the opportunity, open up your packet and take a look at the January highlighted report. It's a terrific past month in all of our schools, and really proud of the students and staff for everything that they've accomplished. We'll start with the high school, and you can see some of the pictures there, but there's pictures of the choir, the basketball team, science Olympiad, also the girls hockey team that pulled off the Chippewa Falls, recognized influential staff members during their time at the high school. When we look at the middle school, again, several holiday concerts are noticed, as well as work with our 8th grade mentors and the 6th grade students, decorating cookies over the holidays, and then dress up days held by student council. At our elementary schools, our school nurse, Mrs. McMahon, organized a caroling event for our students at Downsville. They performed at the Downsville Downtown Pavilion. There was a penny ward to raise funds for stepping stones. And then also student councils had an event at Walmart to help fill a family's wish list for the holidays. Knapp Elementary School, you can see our art teacher introduced scratch art animals with our 5th grade students, practicing using creative texture and value. Student council members decorated stockings to bring to the Bridge for Hope. And then other items, including kindergartners, 5th grade students making gingerbread houses together. At Oak Lawn Elementary, there's a picture there of 1st grade students working on their math. Students were also greeted by special visitors after all school sing-along. Fifth grade students worked on printmaking, and indoor recess gave students a chance to play Candyland in kindergarten. River Heights Elementary School, boy, I think I'm wearing the same outfit. I don't wear many outfits, but anyway, at River Heights, I had a quick chance to stop in during their all-school meeting and get a chance to talk to all the students at River Heights before the winter break. Also, you can see the second and third grade students perform their first music concert of the year. Kindergarten students celebrated the holidays, decorating tree ornaments with their parents. And then at Wakanda Elementary School, Wakanda gathered for a winter sing-along in the gymnasium right before the break. The fifth grade students proudly presented their national park projects to the class. They do have Ranger Night coming up at Wakanda Elementary School. Can't wait to see that. And then also Craft Night brought smiles to everyone who joined in the fun, that family craft night. So just a terrific month in our schools. Our staff members do so much during the school day and outside. It makes it a great place for all of our kids.
Great, thank you. Next up, we have our student representative communications. Do you want to come down here? Do you want to turn? It's up to you.
All right, welcome to the high school, guys. Super cool to have you here. This is where we have our student council meeting, so it's kind of fun to have all of you here with us. We're excited to be back for our first meeting of the new year.
We have lots of exciting information to share with you today. First off, Spencer Kelsey and Sawyer Bass, Global Scholar Program participants, spent time raising awareness of the work done by Doctors Without Borders and a debate sale to raise over $400 for the good work of this organization. These students did a great job giving their time for a good cause.
The Menomonie High School Science Olympiad team is now up and rolling. The team captured a huge win at the Boysville Invitational in December over last year's Minnesota State champions, Mounds View. They also defeated Rochester, Wayzata, Chicago Technical School, Madison West, Hudson, and Minnetonka along the way. Last weekend, the entire Olympiad team of 51 students headed overnight to Slinger, Wisconsin, where they placed second out of 14 teams in another close battle with across-state rivals Madison West. The team believes they are the strongest team in recent history representing Menomonie and has incredible depth this year with 51 students. In fact, the high school has one team of 15 composed of just this year's freshmen. This year's captains, Grant Burns, Amy Liu, Olivia Rubenzer, and Ben Sigmund are hopeful for multiple individual state championships this year, and have made it their goal to lead the team to another regional championship, and the top three team finish at state.
Most of the students competed for regionals by testing their knowledge as well as working through their skills in virtual simulations. We also had internship students participate in mock interviews with community members, allowing them to practice and showcase the skills they've developed in class.
This spring break, the high school band is preparing for an exciting performance tour aboard the Royal Caribbean Symphony of the Seas. On March 15th, students, chaperones, and Mr. Carcula will fly to Miami, where they'll board the ship for a cruise with stops in St. Martin, St. Thomas, and Coco Cay, Bahamas. The band will perform twice aboard the ship, once in the Royal Theater and once at the Aqua Theater in St. Martin. Students will also have the opportunity to perform at a local school and explore the island of a catamaran excursion. This trip offers our students a unique opportunity to share their talents and experience new cultures while creating lasting memories.
FBLA had a very successful community service event where they sold cupcakes, cotton candy, and held a miracle minute at a boys basketball game in December. FBLA donated $400 to the March of Dimes for prematurity awareness. They are now currently preparing for their upcoming regional competition. Students are taking pre-conference exams and preparing projects and presentations for the competition held at St. Croix Central High School on February 1st.
The Menomonie DECA team had a great competition at the DECA District 1 conference this past weekend at UW Stout, where 55 students competed. 13 students placed and 3 were finalists. They were Olivia Rubenzer and Elaine Jean, receiving first place in marketing management team decision making. Aiden Anderson and Max Yeager, first place in sports and entertainment marketing team decision making. Mason Harmon, receiving second place in business finance. Corbin Schumacher and myself, receiving second place in the entrepreneurship team decision making. Abby Lake and Grace Edinburgh, second place in sports and entertainment marketing team. Chase Pember and Everett Paulson, second place in travel and tourism. Parker Jacobs received third place in accounting applications. Blake Behrens received third place in principles of marketing. Brecken Richards was a finalist in accounting applications, and John Gabey and Brody Thornton were finalists in marketing management team.
That is all we have for tonight. Thank you for having us.
As always, thank you so much for being here. All right, next up we have community communications.
Yeah, there were forms available. We didn't see them.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So no one has, okay, so no one has submitted a form. All right. Then, let's move on to the revenue and expenditure reports for the month ended December 2024.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I can start with the revenue report that I submitted to you. Not too much different here. I know that I did look up, so as far as levy revenue, which is the top item on that, that should start coming in February. Additionally, equalization payments, also the next one should be coming in March. And of course, grants kind of trickle in as they come from the state. So not too much to report new in that report. Any questions before go on? Then the expense report by object. So object number 310 to 319, which is labeled personal services. That's increased about 10%. And over last year, and digging into why, it looks like the audit had raised the price of the audit. Bibsley had increased their prices a little bit over the previous year. Also, a significant increase in staff physical exams. So staff are required to have a physical exam before they start in the district. Those exams have nearly doubled in price, which has increased that account as well. As far as expenses in function, 26,000, which is central services, had a bit of an increase for reasons that I talked about. Is the increase in the audit and the physical exams, because that ties into that function. But also, as we had mentioned before, I believe the principal training associated with Act 20 has also increased that some. Any questions?
Thank you for that, for the reports and for the added information. Next up, we have the monthly employment report for December of 2024. This is just an informational report with hires and resignation. Any questions or discussion on the monthly employment report? All right, seeing none, we will go on to the consent agenda. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Emily, second by Abe. We have the minutes from the regular board meeting in December 9th. Financial reports, general fund checks in the amount of 2,000? No, oh, that's it, sorry. My bad. $2,309,342.55. There's a decimal. And cash receipts in the amount of $162,675.94 for December of 2024. Donations exceeding $1,000 in the month of December, we had a lot. We had a $10,500 donation made to Wakanda Elementary School by the Wakanda PTO for the purchase of new cafeteria tables. A $5,000 donation made to the Food Service Angel Fund by United Way, St. Croix, and Red Cedar Valleys. A donation of $6,302.25 to River Heights Elementary from the River Heights PTO for a field trip to Madison, and a donation of $1,403.85 to Downsville Elementary from the Student Council's Pending War fundraiser event. So thank you to those PTOs and to everyone else that is doing fundraising on behalf of all the great things happening in our district. Any questions or discussion on the consent agenda?
Is that a question? We have the fundraiser, ongoing angel fund donation process. Is this in part of that, or
It's part of it. Yeah, and the school district continues to solicit support donations for the school nutrition angel fund to help families.
Any other questions or discussion on anything in the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, let's vote. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Next up, we have the personnel consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the personnel consent agenda. Motion by Amy, second by Dominique. And we have several retirements now. This was mentioned earlier, but the deadline for staff to submit their retirement is January 15th, so we're seeing a lot. One resignation. Do you want to add anything?
No, just, well, yes, I'll add that we had a resignation from our assistant director of food and nutrition. That came in late. We thought there may need to be a full session tonight, but that is not needed. It is suggested, recommended that the board approve that tonight as part of the personnel consent agenda.
sorry, I just want to point out because I was reading two of the retirement letters from the various people. By my count, there's 154 or more years of teaching experience retiring this year. 154 years of experience. It's incredible, right? So talk about the generational turnover, but also, you know, the care of the people who are students for 154 years.
Yeah, when Mr. Haas sent his in, he sent a real nice no with it. I just replied no. And then quickly after the other, congratulated him and all these people, Mr. Haas, Button Buddha, Tina Buchholz, Maria Dreskowski, Amy Schroeder, just terrific people who have had such an impact. And one of my favorite memories of Mr. Haas, and I hope he continues to do it once in a while in retirement, but he works many of the different extracurricular opportunities and events in the school district. And oftentimes he's the announcer for basketball games. And if the band isn't playing, instead of playing the national anthem off a recording, he'll say, and now for the national anthem sung by us or by you, and he'll lead the national anthem. And he's an English teacher, and when people come to our school and they see that, they just really have an appreciation for how terrific Mr. Haas and our whole teaching staff is.
Yeah, that's a lot of wonderful experience. We'll definitely miss after the end of this year, but happy to see them go on to whatever's next in their life. If there is no more questions or discussion, we can vote. And just a reminder, voting no doesn't stop any of this. That motion passes 7-0. Next up, we have the action agenda. We have the action to approve our 2024-2025 budget revisions. I'll entertain a motion to approve those. Motion by Angie, second by Abe. And just to clarify, what we're looking at here tonight isn't, the numbers are no different than what we looked at in December, is that correct?
That is correct. The only thing different is the extra column for, one, a description, for the function and source code, and that was added, so that's the only difference.
And I really appreciate that. It makes it a lot easier to follow along and make sure we understand what's going there. Any questions or discussion on the budget revisions? All right, seeing none, let's vote. All right, motion passes unanimously. On to our discussion agenda. First up, we have a review of the 30-year capital improvement plan.
So, Rachel,
One sec, I want to make sure everyone is aware there were some updates to the attachments today. So if you have like the old version open in your computer, you might want to fill those out and open the new ones. Okay, now go ahead.
perfect. I really appreciate the work done by Eric Nelson and Kevin Tomaszewski. Also, Katie Krager's been very involved in the technology portion of our 30-year plan. And what we'll do is Kevin will kind of present an update on the projects that have been completed, kind of the projects that are being looked at. And then I think we need to have a discussion about what we want that plan to look like moving forward. So Kevin, why don't you start with an update on where we're at?
Sure, so out of the two documents, I'm going to be talking about the Word document, and maybe you can see it follow along. And as we go along, we'll look at the questions. As Eric said earlier, we're starting out 24-25 projects with approximately $8.65 million. So from that time, we completed or currently working on a number of projects. Middle school bleachers, the inspections, we got a company inspecting today, so it's just a matter of being that person and River makes floors, the contract, with asphalt materials, and now it's not the ideal time to be changing outdoors. I'm just trying to slow that down. Waiting for some here at the high school, light fixtures for the gym, we're doing softball, light fixtures for the gym, all of those fixtures are delivered today, so we make $9. There's ready roll for one required spring breaks plan to start the installation into the spring break. Pool heat exchanger, this is a little more involved, so our current one is not heating up to capacity. So we have a new one. The downside is we got all from the factory. So we're looking at March 6th ship date. Kind of wanted to get this rolling before the temperatures got cold and there's kind of water. It's pretty tough to get around on it. So it's still coming. It's a little bit delayed. We're doing what we can to keep that water as warm as we can. Depending on who you ask, it's either ideal or too cold. I would probably side on the too cold. With the too cold group, our high school students like a little cooler, so they're happy. But we've been pretty consistently holding the water temperature 75, a little warmer. Typically in like the morning swim, customers, for lack of a better word, like more than 80. So that's kind of where we're at for discrepancy. We're doing a couple things to try and keep it warm. The air temperature, there's some training happening at the weekends tonight with the evening light cards that are typically the last ones on the day. To get those pool covers down, at least get a little bit of heat attention on those. So, to be continued there. Over at Wakanda building envelope, we're kind of low-hanging fruit there. We're going through replacing door seals and sweeps. We have a number of those items in. Our head custodian has installed some. Everything's fitting right. Again, we're going to wait till the weather warms up a little bit to keep going on that. Laptop maintenance. Most years we do this year is the same, middle school and high school, both of those are done. Chemical controller for the pool was installed last week. All we really have left there is some programming so we can log on to our HVAC systems and see what's happening. That'll be taking place over the next couple of weeks. And finally, the middle school heating line that was up a few weeks ago, basically cut out a section of line for the boiler plant to the gym, replaced it with valves, etc. So that's a real quick recap. Here's the ones that we're recommending for future projects. So we're looking at 25, 26 projects. Again, blacktop maintenance, the district office in Old Lawn, they're due for some work there, again, just crack sealing into lines. Door replacements, I'm seeing that this is probably going to turn into almost every year as the buildings are aging, the doors are not getting any better. The high school is going to need some major work in the coming years, but right now we're really struggling with the main entrance to the building. Our maintenance staff are running out of options and repairs this kind of program, so I would like to replace the entry doors as well as the doors in the back way. River Heights building envelope, the plan is similar to what we would seal the building envelope, primarily being doors, seals, things like that. River Heights blacktop and sidewalk repairs. So I'm talking about the bus loop here. Every spring we go in and put down the whole top patch, whatever we can get our hands on to repair the potholes in the bus loop. It's not a real highly used area for visitors, people like that. The buses drive over it every day. The problem is when it falls snow. Once you get those potholes going, it's difficult to not tear up the dirt. The sidewalks are in pretty rough condition over there, so my suggestion would be to replace everything on that side of the school. The catch with that job, I would prefer to have that designed so it's a long-term use. Once it's in, it should be there for years to come. So I want to make sure that all of our ADA ramps done right, drainage done right, all the elevation type stuff, I think that should be designed. But by the time the board considers and possibly approves these projects, and I reach out to that designer, I feel like some of these projects would run out of time to get good bids. So this is one project where I would say it's a good example of a project that we start, get our plan of attack completed, and then kind of reassess where are we at, either can we get good bids or do we sit on this and put it all in the bid next January. Get the contract. Plenty of time to listen to our schedule, so we can try and push it through sooner. I would just suggest that it might go to same time. Here at the high school, some preventative maintenance to the children. Steve, our energy manager, has been doing a great job troubleshooting, reaching out to contractors, asking questions, going to the factory to replace. We have a game plan to do a little bit of preventative maintenance this spring to the children. When we get inside to the internals of the chiller, we're just a little concerned it might be findable. I'm trying to eliminate those surprises. So I put this in here as kind of a worst case scenario that once we get in and see what we can't see now. And I listed some of the items that are going to be inspected and considered for upgrade. So if we need it, I'd like to pursue it. If we don't, great, we might be able to postpone this 2 years, 5 years. Also at the high school, the track. Track is installed back in 16, up to an 8-year life expectancy, so yeah, we're there. I don't see any issues getting this work done this year. I've been communicating with Fisher Tracks, the folks that put our track in. But basically, a base layer was installed back in 16, it's at the end of this life expectancy. We just put essentially another layer on it, structural spray, and line it. The downside of doing this project is going to be without the summer programming that we have. You know, I see the kids out there all the time sometimes, so there's going to be some downtime for the track. I don't have an answer yet for the bridge, so to speak, to get to the football field, so it might be that the whole sports complex will be down for a couple, 3 weeks, somewhere in that ballpark time. It will be dependent on contractor availability, how they put us into our schedules. I'll do what I can to schedule it, the time is most best for us, but it doesn't always work that way. And the tennis courts. Hopefully you were able to see the photos that I shared. I know they didn't work the first time, I think we got it through this morning. But what you're looking at in those photos are pictures of the south courts. Yeah, the south courts. We've done a little homework on this. My homework, and we surveyed the land around the tennis courts, and we took some soil samples through the tennis courts and around the tennis courts. I think we took 8 samples in the courts. With the southern courts cracking as severely as they are, something's going on structurally below. And the soil borings supported that. Typically, I'm told 16 to 18 inches of a base below asphalt is what is recommended for tennis court. We got about 4 inches, so we're way off the mark. And those are constructed, they don't gone up to current standards. So the recommendation for this is we're talking about 6 north courts, basically at our glass slash and holding not too extensive, not normal, maintenance job on tennis courts. For south ones, it's going to be a total. So the fences will come down, we tear everything off, we don't be a base level, base course, and re-asphalt the streets. It's going to involve a lot of time to do the work and a lot of good. So those floors will be down for 2 years, based on the availability when they get here, in between the boats and barrels, seasons. Summer school will be affected. So, they're getting to the point where pretty much things go. So that's those. Technology projects, the her team are looking at updating sample books, technically structured networking equipment, as well as some tech upgrades for the development of school and lead out space.
If you believe it's what?
I'm sorry.
It's the classrooms. Thank you. Sorry, I just didn't hear the last word you said.
But I think it's important to talk about those classroom displays, and that's been a project that's been ongoing in the district. We have such a hodgepodge, or we had such a hodgepodge of different smart boards and other projectors and other displays, many of them grant funded, fundraised, over a couple decades. And as this equipment is reaching the end of its life cycle, no longer working, no longer able to be supported, we really try to prioritize providing the tools and resources in our classrooms. And this would be the final step, I believe, maybe the final step of the elementary schools. So that's that.
All right, so the next couple of projects are examples of ideas that people bring to me that I don't know right now potentially not be the right time for, but I think it's fair to give that you could those ideas. So the first one being the field house flooring. The flooring there is relatively new, it's about 5 years old. So we replaced the floor that essentially was too rich. A little concern about student injuries, the lack of sliding the floor. Well, the new floor is a little too extreme, the other one is a little slippery. So the question is, can we get another floor that's perfect blend of film? So I think we can find that. I think we need to do more homework and we need to know what we're asking for. Maybe get ideas from other schools, more investigation work on contractors, things like that. I don't think we're there yet, so I don't know that I recommend this fact until we have a really good handle on it, those reasons, and the fact that it's such a important. So that's my opinion on that. Another one that was brought forward is the sports complex. So we wrapped that up at the end of the 2024 months. All the work up there is complete as the traffic goes through. The concern is now that we're using it, that it's not the easiest to see surveys of compliments. Primarily the high jump area, if you see it on the pictures, really hard to see over there, it's hard to see the finish line on the map. So the question that was brought forward is some of the expanded. I hadn't thought of that. When during the design phase, it's kind of important to me to separate the briefings on the big guideline. It might be a little OCD, but I don't think it's not. So we did that, and we made provisions that expanded features that were done. With this scenario, it would go east, it would be more involved. So what we would need to do is make some modifications to the drainage, move the lake pool, things like that. The biggest figure in this, which I don't have a handle on yet, is the amount of seats that the bleachers have dictates how many stalls we need for restrooms. So we need a little bit more time to figure that out. Once you have that information, you can sit down your next year.
I know Dale really wishes he was here tonight, and this idea actually came from Dale. And, Dale has a vast experience with track, and he really would like the bleachers to cover the finish line. But because it's not just a matter of putting up some bleachers, it's moving a light pole. And I think, like Kevin said, probably the biggest issue is that working with the state and having the plants approved, all the compliance issues with restroom facilities, that really bumped up the cost in the first place. We would expect that we would have to add on to that, which I already think is more than what's needed. So, as much as we would like to recommend, this project that Dale would like to see come forward, we just can't do that at this time.
All right, so the next section here, giving examples of some investments that I need. This is a typical thing anywhere you go through the different projects, what has changed, what can I get the information on, and there's some examples of things that we do road repairs every year, so I get the opportunity to talk to the man and say, what's the current price per square foot for tearing all the rough and selling things up. So that's kind of what I did, something in those things. I did add one new project, the solar at the next school. I know it's been talked about keeping forward with solar projects. And with here, we started a discussion about this time. We'll just need a little direction on how to take the project. If you want something outcome that's visible to the community and students, or do we want to take up some green space, put in a big array, and really reduce the energy consumption of the building. It's going to be significant cost difference between the two. So right now, we're working with that solar design and get a couple examples of projects. Kind of far apart from each other, just for examples of narrow that out. Then, pool. So a certain amount of work was approved with the pool. Structural supports are done. The filtration system is all in running, the controllers and we're working on the exchange, talking to the existing walls and stuff. As we do this work, everybody says it's time in the pools to see more and more. So when you drain the pool, you get on the pit, you can see what you get. So there's two parts to this. Are we going to pursue some of the projects that we put on hold, such as flooring upgrades, bleachers, things like that? And what we're seeing is some of the pipe that goes underground from infiltration and the pool is a big buildup of material and gas. I don't have a handle on what it is, but it's fine. But it's right there. So while we had 2 days to look at this before we had to start building it up, we bring cameras that starts good, just determining if the only on the exterior or both. Like it's restricted, so we're not getting 100% of the fullest design. So in my mind, the high pressure one get those on those pipes. Flush the system several times to look at the goal. But then looking for worst case scenarios, what if something happens? jetting process, the wall is included. We have pipes that are all, which would be low defect pool. That's going to be a very pool. Again, more work needed to be done to bring it all this. So, well, my recommendation is not do any work or not do any further up to this. So we have so a little direction on that would be good, just to see how we keep moving on it. Let's do this. So with all of that said, based on the plans and the 30-year plan that's currently written, we're going to see a positive balance until only 26 months. I wasn't clear to me if the heat exchanger, is that a new part that's put with the renovations last year, or is that the modification? This wasn't clear, that it was part of the refiltration. No. I think there's some sort of locking. It's not and on that, I think your description of the things that could go wrong with the pool is pretty clear. I'm curious, the estimate you gave, it's an additional $20 an hour, which is something remaining work. Like, where in the scale of pessimism is that number? Is that just the things that were already on the list for the tiling and other aesthetic work, or is it like includes some mechanical? Yeah, so I wasn't able to, I'm working with an engineer firm on this, and I wasn't able to get to, I'm putting a number out and then we're going to take my costs. Ideally, we line somebody up to do all that work, but we have a plumber now, Jeff Hall, both sides. It's how do you balance it too? Contractor supplies. So this is fairly pessimistic, but not absolute worst case. I will have to. Okay. No, it's fair. It's fair.
Well, and Kevin, we're not going to take it to the bank,
Yeah.
but in the discussions we've had, I would classify it more as the worst case than not.
I just wondering if I could read the two. Is it like between 0 and 4, or between 0 and 2.5? That's kind of like. But you don't have to answer that. It's not a fair question. At this point, I really don't know. Digging that hole it's much more I mean, even reason the pool itself, right? How we're doing that and we replace the troughs, right? It just has the water. So those things get okay.
But just to give a little more detail on this, less than half of the cost would be the bleachers, the retiling, or it's about half, not even half the cost of the place. It's just a placeholder. We recognize it's just a placeholder. But when you and I were talking about it, we're figuring more than half of that cost would be like the pipe replace, trenching, all that.
In my memory, it's fairly accurate. I think the bleachers were in the $60,000 to $70,000. I think tiling the deck was somewhere in the $300,000. That's an example of one of those projects that we try to maybe get going quickly. And I think the contractor gave us a number. While we're busy, but we'll do it if we need to know. So again, this would be something we want to really plan out to get close to this time. Plan. So it's obvious to say, right? Then the jetting and plumbing. That's something where the repair time might also get a lot more intense. Right? If you actually have to dig out the repair time, it would become much more expensive in this situation. I mean, basically, rebuilding the building down there.
See, and Kevin and I talked a lot about this because the likelihood of the pool actually, stop operating because of this pipe issue is probably not super high in the short term. But the problem is that, and I hate this, I like analogies, that. And this might not be it's probably not good. But, it's kind of like go to the doctor and say, well, your cholesterol's pretty high and, your arteries might be starting to build up a little bit. So you might want to do something about I mean, when you're 48 years old, that probably doesn't mean you're gonna have a heart attack soon. But if you don't do something about it, you just don't know when it's gonna happen. And it's kind of like a pool in a way. If we know that there's some sort of issue, if we plan for it, we can plan for it on our schedule, on our budget, and we can get it done on kind of our terms, no matter what the circumstances. We don't know what the circumstances, but at least we can do it on our terms. Whereas if we wait for that thing to blow or clog or whatever it is, no, it could be the middle of the swimming season or something like that. And that pool could be out of commission for 5 months. And we wouldn't have budgeted for it, we wouldn't have planned for it. And so, I mean, Kevin and I are both like, boy, this would be easier if we just wait till after we both retire. give it one more decade. And frankly, it very well could be okay for another decade. It wouldn't shock me if it functions okay for another decade. And then neither of us have to worry about it. But we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't bring this to you and say, this is an issue, you know, we may want to consider doing something about it before the pool has part of it. During the middle of the season. Trying to be proactive.
So that's kind of it.
Just out of curiosity, since Parks and Rec uses the facility, do they help with any of the cost fees associated with it?
I'll answer that. They would help in terms of the rental fees. We would maybe charge the program fees, but I don't think we would expect Park and Rec to contribute to a project. At least I don't think that's been done in the past.
Is it something where, I'm sorry, I can't be the right distance. Is it something where we could adjust fees to compensate for some of the costs of the project?
You know, I think that makes sense. You know, we've really worked hard to try to keep these down for the users. But, you know, that pool lasts a long time and it's served us well. But I do think most people would find it reasonable that we're spending, you know, multi-million dollars to keep this thing operational and really the only pool, indoor pool in our community at this point. I think most people would be pretty receptive to the idea of having a little higher fee structure. But that little higher fee structure isn't going to pay for this. Any other questions about the pool? Would we also like to talk a little bit about playgrounds? I know that came up in some of our strategic planning listening sessions. We've also heard it through the feedback we've had. Also, I appreciated, you know, some of you reached out and asked some questions about that. I don't know, does anybody have a specific question or do you want me just to talk about it?
I think I have a specific question, which is, or comment/question. I mean, as the 30-year plan stands right now, when it was made, started about 10 years ago, playgrounds simply were not considered part of the footprint of the schools for that purpose. Is that correct?
Let's just clarify, we don't have any specific playground costs in the 30-year plan, do we? I mean, we do have blacktop maintenance, things like that, which some of those areas are used during recess, but in terms of specific playground equipment, no.
Right, okay. That was my question as a starting point, yeah.
So when the 30-year plan was made, really it was right after the referendum in 2013 and the major building renovations that we had. And we started with the most basic components, the roofs, the boilers, you know, your major structural components. Every year we have made that plan better, and really it's really the envy of schools in Wisconsin how detailed our plan is. The challenge is that as we make it bigger and we look at the funding that goes along to fund that plan, it simply can't be funded under our current school funding model. And when we went to referendum last year for operating, that would have allowed us to continue to fund our capital maintenance plan in our current budget. But without that additional funding, it really puts the capital maintenance plan in competition with classroom programming, teachers, class sizes, all that. And I think the board was wise in prioritizing the classrooms and the programming and eliminating the funding for the capital improvement plan. But back to playgrounds. Certainly playgrounds are an important part of our schools, but I will say that we have a large inequity with our playground structures. We don't have a detailed plan that every school will have, whatever, a slide, 5 swings, or a certain number of swings per kids, or square footage for kids. Really, the playgrounds were made, with some school funding, I believe, but also a lot of private funding by groups of parents or by principals that got major grants. It was before my time here in Menomonie, but that River Heights playground really is one of the nicest elementary school playgrounds I've ever seen, with the large castle. But we also know that playground is really, showing its age. And I appreciate the principal, Mr. Kennedy, and the parents, PTO volunteers. They went out there and did a lot of work on it this past summer to make it safer, and really, do what they can to still make it functional. But I guess that's the direction that we need. First of all, is that something that we feel is appropriate for the plan? And then if it is, what is the expectation that the board wants for us when we look at playgrounds? For example, would you want us to look at current playground structure as it exists in each school and come up with a plan to maintain and replace current structure? Would you want to have a playground plan developed based on current playground expectations, recommendations? Certainly accessibility is a concern for all public places and our schools. Would we want to develop an ideal playground and fund that or a portion of that? There's so many different ways that we could take this playground funding, but one thing I would say is that you need to consider that we have 5 elementary schools, and each of those schools has different needs. But I think as administrators, we would need some direction from the board in terms of what you expect from us when it comes to playgrounds and the capital improvement plan.
So, no, I think you're asking very good questions. I think these are, there are some really big questions structurally about playgrounds in particular and the 30-year plan in general. And to me, I guess the more I think about the 30-year plan serves 2 different purposes simultaneously. And I think it's worth kind of decoupling a little bit. One is knowing what the footprint of the district is and what will need maintenance in the future, and just knowing that, 5 years down the line, you need these boilers. 10 years on the line, you need North Streets, whatever it might be, right? That is a crucial planning thing. And the second one is, what is it going to cost me to do this particular year, and how we want to budget for that over time. And I think that those are both very important. And my personal feeling right now, I haven't talked about this very deeply, but I think that the playgrounds, are a crucial part of the capital footprint of the district. And it is worth writing out what their future lifetime is and making sure that's kind of projected in the future. Whether it's funded by the district or by PTOs and volunteers or a mixture of the 2 or grants, whatever, I feel like that's kind of different. That can be a different question than we think about how to plan that, how we actually put the money for it. But, we will know, it would be useful to know, there's all these millions of dollars of equipment over time when we play the district, which eventually will be replacing the repair. And I think right now it's kind of off the books. From the board perspective, it'd be really helpful to have that written down in terms of timelines and so on. So regardless of what, if we can pay for it or not, it's sort of a different question. I do really appreciate the thing you mentioned about what is it we're trying to write down, though. Is it the current structure and maintenance, or is it, if, like in the case of River Heights, there's been a lot of discussion about, well, if this is not maintainable, then is there an ability to get grants and so on to rebuild it in a way that is up to more contemporary standards? It's more accessible, it's more, safer in various ways, et cetera. And I don't know the answer to that question, but I think it's a very good one. But I do think that making a plan, or at least a projection in the future, is extremely useful, even if we know that we want to get a national market.
That's helpful. I guess my question to that would be, would we be making a plan with equitable consideration for each elementary school? Or would we make the plan based on the desires of each PTO principal type of thing? I mean, I want to be very careful in this because I know the playgrounds mean a lot to a lot of people. But I doubt that a model elementary playground is going to involve a class or a castle and, stuff that may have been extravagant at one point. But I also know there's considerations about where is that in the community and who is it used by and all that stuff as well. And I also don't think it's appropriate to build a castle at a school of 100 or 94 kids. When there might be differences between a school of 450 compared to a school of 96. And you also have to look at projected enrollment and projected futures. I guess where I would probably go would be working with some sort of playground designer and kind of come up with a standard playground plan similar for schools of similar sizes and kind of have that be the baseline. I don't know if that's what you're talking about or if you're talking about something different. Or not talking about, envisioning.
I'd be interested in a first step to know what might come out of a holistic discussion about a playground plan if we have, the 5 elementaries building leadership team for working that out together or talking about it at least as a first step and maybe with input from each school's PTO. But I am speaking only for myself here and my experience of being in the world, but I'd be really surprised if 4 elementary principals are going to demand a castle playground as part of as part of what they would see as an equitable plan. I think if we got the 5 elementary building leadership teams together, and if that process involved direct PTO involvement, or if it involved the principals working with their community in some other way prior to that, I'd be really interested to know if we could come up with a plan that is coming from the ground up, that's coming from the community level up. I'm a little concerned about the idea of the school board deciding we need a consultant to design an ideal playground, and that feels very top down. So I would love to see what could come from bottom up to start with. I think we can probably do that in a way that doesn't overpromise. But I would be I'd be really surprised if we had 4 people demanding that everybody gets exactly what River Heights has, for example.
Well, I don't think so either. But I guess the question really is more about equity and what's the board's desire. I agree with you. I don't think if we had the 5 elementary principals talk about it right now, that they would demand anything.
I'm not sure that the board's desire should dictate what goes at what goes at each elementary school. I don't think this group of people is equipped to decide that. I think, I wonder if we can put something out today and put something, talk about adding something to the 30-year plan that includes elementary playgrounds, but that the next step of the process would be having those leadership teams come together and discussing an elementary school playground plan that meets the needs of all of the buildings.
I agree with the needs to have use heritage. That's right. And at the very least, some maintenance. And when something's broken or whatever, fixed, if something broken, things get fixed, and I don't know how much that could cost, but at least, at the very least, it needs to be maintained. For sure. But I really like the idea of leadership together, PTO, together to decide what's best.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I'm hearing like two, or at least in my mind, sort of splitting into two different things. Where like, one is this idea of like, if you add it to the plan, like, the plan is like creating what the playground will look like in your school. And like the other piece of my mind is like, I think maybe once the buildings just want support for the maintenance of what they have. I think that one of the cool things about the PTOs being involved so much with getting the playgrounds is that they've been more involved in creating the things rather than like the district creating the support each playground. But like when we think about an elementary school, like there has to be a playground there. So it feels like that has to be something the like board and district is involved or right? Like it's an elementary school without a playground. It's concerning, I know, right? I didn't want to go records. So to me, I think that's been one of the biggest issues, is just providing maintenance of what is already there. But I do like the idea of involving the principals, especially, if we're able to like financially support these projects. Like, I think having uniqueness in each building based on what that building wants and needs.
And I agree, I don't think the board wants to get into the process of designing playgrounds. However, I do think it's the board's charge to determine and direct us how you want this process to go in terms of equity, equality, and finance. For instance, is it, do you want us to look at this in terms of, kind of a similar dollar figure? Or do we want to, commit X number of dollars over a certain period of time, or dollars per student, or dollars per school? I think there needs to be some sort of parameters. And I agree with you about in terms of maintenance and safety is certainly a high priority. But also, depending on what's there, the cost of maintenance for some of these projects might be more than putting in a whole new playground structure and a different school.
The way I would approach that personally is basically, I think that the principals, the college principals and the PTOs at each building, I'm sure, have either formally or informally a pretty good idea of what they'd like to replace. And even out like from, I've been involved in both player rights because now that I'm aware of what they've been looking at, all not people involved. But I think that certainly some people can ask involved in the PTO or the building administration who could say, yeah, we could need this for 2 years, 10 years. And even just asking each building to kind of just write down, leaving aside the budget question, which I'll come back to in a second, but like, what do you think the needs are where you are right now? And just making that projection, because I think we have no visibility to that.
Sure.
And just that, I had no idea that they have this thing that is brand new and very proud of. They think it's the last 20 years, or this is like, and they broke this off so kids don't use it because it's not safe anymore.
Right.
Just having that awareness of what the timelines are aside from the budget question. I think you're right. The top maintenance needs more than rebuilding. I think the things that are looking at right now. On the funding side, I think, honestly, looking at the capital improvement plan, without community involvement in some form, a lot of it's not ever going to happen because of the facts of the budget situation. That community involvement might take many forms, right? For things like the pool or the tennis courts, you might see community groups, alumni groups, whatever, help out in various ways. There's always, as you discussed in the financial meeting, there's always a chance of having recommended districts to support building things. And there's also just, PTOs and people who help with research a lot. So I think there's many things on that list, or you're never going to have them in the form as stated unless there's a lot of people involved. am optimistic that we have a clear list of those needs, which the 30-year plan really does contribute to. It's easier to have people know they're contributing to, right? And I don't know, it sounds like the task force person, just, throw out as an example, not based on anything. It sounds like that's kind of, you did the facilities, you had a contractor plan, et cetera. That's all the thing with a lot of people in the community who really care about the task force, right? And if there's any way to get them involved, like that would be probably super beneficial, I hope, or maybe a headache too, but like both, right? That's what these things often are. Likewise for the pool, right? It's the only public pool in the city, certainly, most of the county actually, right? So, and then getting the playground certain community needs. So I think that that's what I'm saying about decoupling. I'd like to see like what's the timeline need just based on the people who are using it and what they foresee happening. And then if there's dollar amounts that seem unreasonable or impossible, then we have a community operation engagement process to settle it.
And just maybe add on to that, if through this process of figuring out, okay, well, what are the basic maintenance needs of each of these playgrounds? What are the, what's the vision, what's the want, what's the long-term goal? If it comes out that there's dramatically different things, then maybe we come back and say, okay, well, here's a cap on, I don't know what, I don't even know a number to throw out. A cap on what the school district do more external fundraising. But I also don't think we can say that until we know what what each building is going to need.
Okay, so what I've heard from the board is that no one's voting on anything tonight. But what I've heard is, yes, we think the playgrounds are part of the school footprint. Yes, they would be appropriate in some way, shape, or fashion to be included in the capital improvement plan. And that the board would like to see work done to help determine what potential next steps might be, whether it be maintenance, replacement, rebuilding, addition, whatever. Shannon, I hate to put you on the spot, but you're the elementary principal. Is that enough input or enough direction from the board for the elementary principals to start working on this?
I think so.
And develop something?
Certainly start with just looking at it, existing equipment and kind of making that prediction of what the longevity of what we have is, or what is in need of additional pieces or replacement items, things like that. As you mentioned a lot, we are very thoughtful when we put in those new pieces because we know it has no maintenance attached to it too. And we oftentimes come out of our site budget or out of our PTO donations. We've always been really careful about putting new things installed with that in mind, but we could certainly look at what we have and just kind of make a gauge of how long those pieces might be there or when replacement would be needed.
I just want to, I don't see the downside of looking at what we currently have because I honestly don't know. I have no idea, especially at some of a few buildings that I'm not typically at. So I don't know. I also am thinking about having this has not been in the plan in the past, correct?
Correct.
So there's definitely been work on playgrounds in my tenure here over the last 20 years. Where did that come from? I'm just curious to know. I do know the last time I was at the conference, actually in pieces that I hadn't seen before, but I don't know when they came in. That I went, oh, it's really cool. So where did they come from?
In a lot of cases, it was fundraised by PTO groups. Wakanda does the big, my kids went to Wakanda, and Jill kind of ran the PTO for a while. I know they fundraised and they put zip line in, and some things like that. I believe the River Heights Castle was a large grant, what was that, 20 years ago or something like that?
It's fundraising, and the whole community came out and helped build it. Man, my friend over here, Michelle, pulls my arm and says, "You're helping tonight."
But to your question about the maintenance and then the other pieces, it's been a combination. It's been a combination of volunteers. Like I mentioned, Mr. Kennedy, the River Heights principal, he had a group of people out there, did a lot of good work on the playground. Kevin and I toured it this summer, and we did, we identified, does it need to be shut down, does it need to be ripped out? And, there definitely were areas that with a little bit of TLC, maybe more than a little in some cases, it was certainly still functional, especially if opposed to putting $1 million into it. But Kevin's crew also has spent a lot of time over the years on various, I don't know if you have some examples, Kevin, or any comments.
Well, yeah. It's work orders come in, I must ask some of the staff, we won't take care of this. I would just be cautious of all the staff installing this. We'll find it, for example, we have this equipment very good in, and I'll just leave it at that. There just needs to be a little communication on those types of projects.
But any other comments on the playgrounds? So,
Yeah, just to say, Michelle, be part of the Reprise PTO prior to here. We fundraised for everything, and it was all parent community input for all the things that we had had, everything was taking place. I love the recommendation, the idea of having transparency among principals, PTOs, peers in the school, because again, we are not living it daily, we hear things from people. I think I find a little bit of frustration as a former parent, right, and having to help with all that maintenance and installing of basketball hoops and painting of blacktop. I mean, I'm happy to help, but do you know what I mean? It's like, to me, I feel like that's where really the grounds needs to help more with that, because again, we're here. I don't know, that's my frustration with kind of the whole playground situation. I have a non-playground question. I was curious, I mean, it's sort of adjacent to the playground discussion, but in the donation fee, except today, the Wakanda PTO replaced the cafeteria table. And I'm curious about like what that looks like in other buildings. That's like a weird, another kind of like weird thing for PTO to have to cover.
well, and I'm glad you brought that up because we heard some of the strategic plan listening sessions too. Our PTOs have been great. I will say there are situations where the PTOs have done a great job raising funds and maybe not necessarily with a clear objective for why those funds are being raised. Sometimes the walkathon may be an example where a lot of funds are raised with the idea that everyone knows there's needs, everyone knows that there's desires, and then the funds are then offered to the building to use to try to better the school. For instance, and you brought up the Wakanda cafeteria tables. We have cafeteria tables, obviously, in each of our buildings. Some of them are newer than others, but just because something might not be the newest version doesn't mean that they need to be, thrown away or get rid of. So there might be a situation where a PTO group might think, well, yeah, I think new cafeteria tables would be easier for the custodians to move, they'd be more comfortable for the students to sit, they might be more versatile and be able to be used for, bleachers or, some other things than maybe a traditional table, and that's where a donation like that might come forward. Or maybe, I think we also had a donation at Wakanda for some sound system, where, okay, we have a basic sound system, maybe it doesn't work as well as it should, or it's not serving newer functions that they'd like it for. So, hey, let's fundraise and get a new sound system to replace the one that's either old or doesn't function as like we would like it to function. So it's not necessarily that, the school isn't providing basic services. I'm not saying there's not ever a case of that, but I think a lot of times people do hear that, they're like, oh, geez, why did we have to fundraise for cafeteria tables? Well, we didn't say it fundraise for cafeteria tables. That was a choice made by building leadership, PTO leadership. If not, I'd like to know the example, but I never got a request from across for new cafeteria tables.
I was just curious.
That's a great question.
That makes sense to me more like oh, they had extra money and they like upgraded, upgraded or bought part. I just didn't know like the records were long enough.
Well, I heard some of that listening sessions, I was a little embarrassed too. I mean, because we've had funding requests, we've actually funded more than what's been requested in the annual budget process. I think because we've been, have a really tight budget, we've had this capital improvement plan. I know people don't like to talk about the sports complex, but, there was a group in town that raised, about $1 million because people wanted to track, stuff like that. We were able to do things and we're able to do more things. And maybe the playgrounds are it, I don't know, but, I think the new budgeting tool that Eric has will help as well. But I think our strategic planning sessions are really going to help, and the survey that's going to go out, that's going to help identify things too. So I'm not saying everything's always perfect, but I think generally when people come to us and say, hey, we need this, we have found a way to do it.
I'll also just say, in my experience as a PTO mom, I think sometimes the conversation is happening with the building leadership, building principal. What are we going to do with the limited building funds we have this year? What do we want to spend them on? And if the PTO fundraising can come in and pay for the tables, that may mean that Wakanda could, I don't know. I'm not going to, Wakanda could buy some reports or, whatever else that they have on their list.
Well,
That's been my experience.
And sometimes it's easier for a PTO to make a big donation to a big project and then, keep the school budget for field trips and, paying the buses for this or that. All that money is expended sometimes, depend on where it's applied as well. Can I just make a couple more comments about the more general subject of the Fund 46 plan? And I know we're going long on this, but we don't actually have that long of an agenda tonight. And I think this is really important. So in the earlier meeting, we saw that because of reducing the contributions to Fund 46, we're really only a couple years out of not being able to fund things. I think it's wise that we start thinking about how we're going to approach that. When I was in Cadott, for instance, and this is how most districts have operated in Wisconsin for almost, since the revenue limits occurred, maybe before. What schools typically do is about every decade or two, they do a facility study and they, have someone come in, and a lot of times facility studies might be with a contractor or something. You might not even charge for that study, but that's besides the point. And I know our district did one, I think it was 2000, before I came, 2011, 2012, Amy, you might have been on the board. Right before the referendum. And that facility study helped identify the future needs of the district, and that led to the renovation of the high school, the renovation of River Heights, and every building was touched based on the facility study that identified those needs. If we're not going to have funding for a capital improvement plan where we can every year annually save and annually do projects, we're going to have to group these things together into larger deals that are going to be a package that are going to have to go to the community for a vote in a capital referendum. That's actually what most of the referendums in Wisconsin are. We try to do it the other way, where it's like, okay, we're going to operate efficiently, and we're going to take care of this stuff as it comes up, so we can do it on time, best value. To me, that's the best way to operate. But we saw in the last referendum, that's not what is the best way to get funded. So I think the board's going to have to think about this. Do we want to continue to try to go with the current mechanism we have and look for additional revenue again through some sort of operating piece? Or do we need to start thinking about, okay, and whether it's next year or the year after, look at some sort of facility study and do like a 5 or 10 year plan and, ask the voters for approval then. Not that everything would have to be done the first year, but otherwise we're just simply not going to be able to fund a majority of the stuff that's on this list.
Facility study is really good because what example, safety, safety of piece, which is why River Heights has a new entrance, so everybody can see if you look when we get home. That was a huge thing. safety needs. We also came in under budget on that referendum, so we're able to pay a third day in June. And also, just
Do you expect if we did, sorry, did I cut someone off? Okay, if we did want to consider a capital referendum, do you expect that with the 30-year plan, as comprehensive as we have it, that we would need a facility study? I mean, that's,
You know, I-
that's the top.
No, that's a question I can answer. I would say yes, and I would say yes for a few reasons. One, even though our capital improvement plan is very, very good, we know there's things that people either think we need or would want that aren't reflected in the plan. And the facility study, is a pretty wide open approach, almost like strategic. It's almost like a strategic plan for your facilities, where you would open it up to beyond just the administration, just the staff. I'm assuming we would want input from parents and the community. So one thing, it might identify some needs that either we haven't thought of or are not included. And then two, if you're going to referendum, there has to be a yes vote for it to pass. And that facility study on the front, getting people involved in the front end, would be very important in terms of getting any kind of support for a referendum. So if that's the direction the board was going to go, I think yes, it would absolutely be needed. But I'd probably wait at the end of the strategic plan to decide.
You said the last time the facilities, what's the term?
Facility study,
Yeah, was done like 2011.
something like that. Before it had to be right around there.
I mean, cross fingers and toes, I hope we can avoid, I hope funding is sufficient and actually operating in a way that is sustainable on its own. I mean, I think the way it's been working in recent history, last year's been fantastic. I mean, and how it's played out is, it's a great way to run an operation, right? But whether or not, there's a need for a capital referendum in the future, it seems like roughly 15 years is a interval in which to do that again regardless, especially if the cost is fairly low. And given how much, I think, and again, the 30-year plan and all Kevin's descriptions are absolutely fantastic, but also I think that like a point in time assessment that is kind of bundled up is a useful tool to have regardless. And if it turns out that, state budget changes, the later state budget structure changes for our favor, then, that's all from there, right? But then we know, have an outside assessment of what the needs are.
So we have a couple years before this runs out. But in those couple years, I think we need to have something in one of those annual work plans or in our strategic plan. I think this might have to be reflected.
So one last question, and first of all, I apologize, I was looking at your name and writing and then started calling you Thomas. I thought your name was Kevin. Do you still need an answer from us about the pool?
I don't think we need an answer. It's very disease, so everybody's on the same page. And not the role that they have. Makes sense. Maybe that's very simple.
And where the answer will come in, we're going to bring back a 30-year plan at the next meeting for more consideration. And, based on what I've heard tonight about the pool, we would keep that in the plan and ask for board approval so Kevin can move forward, knowing that we're going to do the least expensive option, but still addressing the issue.
I think going back to the facility study, and based on the super to go to referendum, I think that would make our taxpayers a bit happier. Because some of the biggest complaints we've all heard about the referendum was that they have really done everybody's study. And letter from, they knew the facility study, we're going to make our super safe. We're going to say entrances, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. So that might be something that would fit into a referendum plan.
That's really a point. If there are no final thoughts on the 30-year capital improvement plan, we can move on to the clerk's report on the 2025 school board election. Hey, clerk.
election is scheduled in the Menomonie area school district for Tuesday, April 1st. There are 3 open seats, and each seat is a 3-year term, and 5 candidates have registered to run. Ballot drawing of lots was held in the order of names and ballots, and so the order is Josie Tillman, Joyce Euler, Dave Smith, Rachel Henderson, and Tom Leeds.
Thank you. If there's no questions or discussion on that, we can move on to review the process for building the 2025-26 budget.
Yeah, I think we already covered a lot of this today, but like Eric said, tomorrow the budget builder packets are involves all principals and department directors. We also have the new tool. I did get some feedback on the tool about maybe at least making the item where people say how much something would cost, make that more of an optional field, which we've already done that. But other than that, we're looking at another inclusive process of getting feedback from people and developing a preliminary budget for the board in February. Eric, anything to add?
No, yeah, I want to keep the budget process the same, but add this, new element to make it a more inclusive process.
I think it's a great idea. I'm really excited that that's going to be part of the process. I really appreciate that. I'm not trying to nitpick, but I did reopen the budget input form, and it does still indicate required field on that one. But
Okay.
I do think it's good to make it like a thorough form, but I also appreciate that we don't want to turn people away from filling it out if there's some information they don't have.
Yeah, I think the one you're looking at is a PDF snapshot. The live online tool has been adjusted.
Okay. Great. Does anyone else have questions or discussion on, I guess we're talking about both the budget input tool, but also the overall budget timeline. This one's gonna be fast. Seeing none. Tony's been waiting patiently. We'll review the number of regular and special education spaces available for open enrollment.
So open enrollment is opening statewide in February. So this is the required reports that every district has to do to determine the number of open enrollment seats available in regular ed and special ed. This report is very similar to past year's reports. We look back at past year's reports. It looks very, very similar, and it uses the same formulas to make that determination. So as far as in general education, our policy, we don't have enrollment caps, meaning for open enrollment purposes, there really isn't a class size limit. As a caveat for elementary, it's stated in our forms that actually the placement of a particular elementary school is the district's decision. All years to get input as far as the public school is playing for opening enrollment into an elementary school. As far as seats available in the special ed, again, if you look throughout the report, it's determined that there's no space available in any of our current programs. Again, I attempt to make best estimates of the number of students within those programs. Meaning if they're, if they're a 5th grader, I do move that student out to 6th grade. I do a little lots of notes, and I try to make that determined. Again, this is an estimate or an estimate because I can't make a determination of wins and without, or students who will qualify between now and next year, or will be dismissed between now and next year. So I'm really trying to make that estimates. And so this is the formula, or this is the report I would use when students to apply for open enrollment to make a determination whether they are accepted or whether their enrollment application is Any questions?
I'm kind of curious if you could tell us if it's common for open enrollment applications to be denied.
As far as like in special education, if I talk to other area difference. My report is probably very similar to their report. And it's, I would say it's probably rare that there are seats available.
Any other questions or discussion on the report of regular and special education spaces available? Number one. Great. Next up, we have review of the audit report.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, so I sent you what the auditors had sent us, basically just, three matters, that, we were looking at as far as internal control matters. One is the financial accounting and reporting, basically, that we use an accounting firm, to file with the DPI, all the necessary financial things that we're required to do. Segregation of duties. We try very hard to, have duties be segregated as much as possible, but with a smaller staff. It's difficult to live up to or to live up to the requirements of GAAP, and so that is a finding that is perennial. And then also adjustments, that there are certain journal adjustments that are at the end of the year, that are common in schools' financial statements. And I think also to reduce these in the upcoming, before the upcoming audit, I will reach out to auditors, obtain a list of those adjustments that were made, and be able to stay ahead of it before the audit and make those adjustments before the actual audit.
Could you give us some examples of what those adjustments are? Like, what does that mean?
It just means that, maybe something was coded incorrectly, or there were certain adjustments that needed to be made, let's say depreciation or other things, that an auditor needs to look at and make the adjustments to ensure that the gap is being followed in those cases. Others could be more proactively looked at as far as, making certain adjustments before the auditors look at the records.
Eric, there's also some examples though of ongoing programming that the numbers just simply aren't even available in time. Being a self-insured school district, that has a large impact on the budget and the budget reporting.
Correct.
Also, we have such a huge summer school programming, and we have constant, expenses related to the school year and the summer school program that, we can't just shut down operations for a month before the auditors come. But yeah, that's something we always work towards, and schools always work towards, but it's not an uncommon recommendation from auditors for schools.
In all of my years on the board, it's always been almost the exact same. I could just recopy it from last year.
I don't think at least last year to this year it's the same.
I think you can go to pretty much any school in Wisconsin and see the exact recommendations.
Other questions or discussion on the audit report?
I do just take a good opportunity to give a shout out to the business department. The work that people do, and Julie Harmer, I think her car was in the parking lot like 18 out of 24 hours for about 2 weeks straight. And she's not the only one. So great job to the business department on having another clean audit for our school district.
All right. Next up, we have review and discuss the 2025 Wisconsin Association of School Board resolutions for delegate vote at the convention. And Dominique Stewart, our board clerk, is our elected delegate for the upcoming convention. Do you want to lead us in this discussion?
So yes, I am the delegate. We will be meeting next week, which is crazy to say. typically, what happens, there's just like a large room, and people get together, and ideally what would happen is we just kind of vote through each of these resolutions, but there is an opportunity for, us as a board to recommend that I make an amendment to something. One hangup that happens is sometimes people get like hung up over the wording of statements, and they really encourage us not to do that, because they're really well vetted, and it doesn't necessarily have that big of an impact. But there were, I also tend to find that I like really like all of the WASB amendments, so I don't normally have anything to change. I'm normally there to support. Some of the ones that stuck up to me that I thought were very important and relatable for us was staff mental health and truancy, and then funding for school meal debt. I'm actually really kind of excited for this meeting actually, because 2 years ago, there was like big fallout during this meeting over funding free lunches, so I'm interested to see how we will respond to at least covering the debt. I don't know, so we'll see. But yeah, so now is the time if anyone has changes or amendments or things that you can share. The other, I guess I would say one more thing. The other thing that tends to happen is that there is an opportunity, I think, for like boards to submit an amendment that like wasn't accepted by WASB to like ask for us to like move on it, but like typically people's feelings is like, you know, they it's not the board. So.
I would just like to say, having been delegate in the past, these are some of the best ones I've seen, the ones I've seen. I like them all.
They
Yes.
feel very current,
Yes, very
which
good.
is really good progress.
Again. The resolution about academic to prepare professionals, I understand the need for teachers in schools, totally get a shortage. The and or, having a bachelor's degree and or, is that something that folks are supporting, it seems like? I mean, so is it saying that people that don't have a bachelor's degree can become a teacher with their license? Pathways to the district that's sponsored? And then my question would be, who is ensuring that efficiencies with pedagogy assessment and classroom management and content areas that those are being met? Because as a university professor, that's what I do. And so I'm just curious, like I credential students based on those areas. So I'm just curious if then districts are going to be tagged doing that, supporting paraprofessional pathways to teacher licensure. If I'm reading that incorrectly, and or. So you're reading it 2502. So that would be my only, if you were discussing with folks, the intent. Again, I understand, I think paraprofessionals are 20 I have been in the classroom before when I was in elementary. But as a college professor who works in school education, and that's what we do on a daily basis, I just want to ensure districts are going to be taking this on, who then is in charge, making sure that the candidates are fully meeting the competencies to be eligible for teacher licensure.
Brian, you would probably know as much about this as anybody from the school district. The way I read this is just simply saying that, you know, there is a process that schools have to follow if someone doesn't have their license. I think this is just saying a person who gets that license doesn't necessarily have to have a 4-year degree.
How would they be licensed?
Well, they don't, just like they are now. If like someone, if they go through the alternative license path, they can work with the school, and if the school feels that they have enough skills to, I don't know, trying to teach 6th grade social studies. Well, right now, the alternative path, they still have to have a 4-year degree, not necessarily as a teacher.
Correct.
But now I think it's saying they can have other life experiences or other job, work-related experiences that might make them someone who could do a good job teaching 6th grade social studies in the school's perception. But they don't necessarily have to have a 4-year degree in accounting or whatever they, you know, any subject that has nothing to do with teaching fourth grade social studies, or sixth grade social studies.
Right, and I don't question people's history, experience, and they think expertise in other areas. We have master professors that stuff that have a lot of industry and they are teaching in the classroom. I just, the way I read and interpreted it was paraprofessionals who do not have a bachelor's degree can be credentialed, certified as a teacher through the district without having a bachelor's degree. And to me, this affects what I do personally, but also professionally. I think about we're trying to make sure our students are reaching proficiencies in all areas, right, of academics, and I want to make sure that we also have rigorous teachers that have been prepared to.
Just, I have a clarifying question. Does this, my understanding, or my read of this, is that it would only allow those paraprofessionals to have a provisional license, right? So that's more like an emergency. Like, that would be like a one-year contract, like someone with a provisional license would be doing, excuse me, like,
No, provisional licenses are good for 3 years. A 1-year license with stipulations is good for 1 year. A provisional license is good for 3 years, and there are stipulations as to whether or not that can be renewed. So that, depending on the pathway that you go. I do know that the state has, is, working with some school districts to pilot some programs that are specific to this. But I believe that the school districts that are working with them are connected with some sort of a higher education, a school of higher education, in order to help the paraprofessionals receive additional education in addition to their training. So this might be the way I read this, just knowing what I know about this. This might be trying to open pathways for that, but that's a very established pilot program. And so it might be just being opening up some of that.
That's my understanding, much the same way. That's my understanding, and then also much the same way that teachers are able to add additional assessment as well. And the CSAs are providing guidance as well.
So the CISA's acting as the credentialing agency then, as opposed to.
They're not acting as a credentialing agency. They are providing support to districts with identifying what that goal looks like.
The schools are ultimately making, the school boards, schools are the ones ultimately making the decision, I believe, whether or not someone can do the job. And I don't see this necessarily being a big issue in Menomonie, because we're still gonna prioritize hiring people with degrees, with proper certification. I do think in some areas of the state, especially some of the more rural, small school areas, I think there's definitely situations where there could be a particular teaching position that just cannot be filled. And this might provide relief to school, someone who has worked in the school as a paraeducator and, you know, might not be as good, but at least it's someone who can do the job.
In my understanding, behind this resolution is to identify a specific pathway, but it's to support the efforts to provide pathways.
So in my opinion, from my background, I feel like this is an opportunity for WASB to take a stand in support of education in general, right? Not only K-12 education, but also higher education. Because I feel like higher education is under attack as well right now. And I feel like whatever you decide to do, know that one of your colleagues would question that resolution, just like the intent behind it. And I understand, but I wouldn't just want to have a person sitting there that's living, breathing, teach my kid, because I can't find somebody that's qualified to do it. You know what I'm saying? As WASB, as an organization, as the leaders of superintendents in our state, like that should be something to be a more dire, you know, something more into.
I'm interested in how other people feel, like, I don't know.
I get your point.
I do too. I do.
I mean, like people that are licensed counselors, and you just have, well, they're here because they can listen, they're good listeners. You know what I mean? Like, I just, and I'm a reading person, I'm reading my students, you know, I just feel like
I've seen some parents though that I feel very comfortable with them teaching second grade.
You know, I get that, and get both of the points, you know, here. But it also, I think, the background of going to education in 10 or 4 years studying, and then all of a sudden somebody comes to the peer educator, and all of a sudden they say, oh, you're so good, you know, you can build this family, you can teach it without paying a career. So, you know, that to me is not undermines what we require our teachers to go in.
right. And I think this could be an opportunity to build relationships with colleges, universities, and to offer a program, because if we have folks that are very educators and would like to be a certain type of teacher, right? I mean, like, I was talking to Mr. Drake, brought students over to university, and they're very professional, and he's like, I want to be a teacher. He's like, oh my gosh, we have all these programs, and talking about different things, right? And he was interested in the path to get there. And I think that could be an opportunity for us as a district to work with the local university.
I get your point. I'm hearing you. I have, seen professionals in our district, not in the classroom classes. And so the fact that they're just talking about a crisis situation, when we, you know, there's no one to hire. And you know you have someone on staff that can do just a wonderful job. It's allowing Mr. Supreme to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I just want to dumb down the teaching profession as I feel like teachers are already under attack and already downgraded and already, you know, people have opinions on education and teachers, right?
No, I get that. And like as a music person, music is very easily one of the places where people are like, here's management. Yeah. It's like, yeah, sure, okay, have fun with that. So I totally get that.
I can see where, like, you know, I can see where this may use it. I'm just saying that we do have nurses in positions. So if we have people on staff already that are parents, if we know good, it's because the trust in there, because some of us are going to lose it, but others will lose it well. So do you have to go to,
Both provides, at least provides support for them to follow the path and get there. You know, we gotta know what that looks like, it's certainly, we can't put on there data.
That is a really fascinating discussion, and I love it. Yeah, because I want to go, people who actually have worked with licensed teachers to come through. My take is, I think that, I want to say, I think I trust you, Dolly, to make that judgment based upon that. I'm sure the same discussion might happen in the assembly. And depending on how it plays out, you know, there's wiggle words in there like reasonable efforts or, content area, there's a shortage of licensed teachers. Or what's a content area, there's a shortage, right? Demonstrated by appropriate experience. And there's lots of kind of very flexible words in there. And I guess I just want to say, like, as our delegate, I trust your judgment on how you go on this one based on how that discussion plays out. I definitely hear everything everyone's saying and agree with all of it, and so I don't know how I would vote for this one.
I agree with you. I was actually going to highlight the clause in here, you know, where there is a shortage of licensed teachers that's doing quite a bit of work, and what does that mean? How dire does the situation have to be, right? And I think that the conversation that happened in the delegate assembly will probably be illuminating.
So much.
Yeah.
There's like I was just reading, I remember the observation here.
I bet you that would have a lot of.
We trust you now. I just had to share it. That's my livelihood, you know. That's my daily job.
Any other proposed resolutions that folks want to comment on? I also really think this funding for staff mental health is a really important one, so definitely encourage our delegates to vote yes on that. Any other discussion or questions for our delegate? Thank you for taking the time. Next up, we have legislative advocacy. So you can see we have outlined here. Well, during the December meeting, we discussed the WASB budget priorities. It's already been mentioned a couple of times tonight that the state has been working on our next biennial budget process. The Joint Finance Committee has now been named, but I don't think that the listening sessions have been scheduled. Although, no, not yet. Yeah. WASB has the Wisconsin Association of School Boards has the budget priorities that they have identified. They look very similar to what we talked about the last time around. And we also have attached here a message from the Association for Equity and Funding, which is another group that works to influence the budget process. And finally, we also have information here about WASB's Capital Day at the Capitol. That's something that the organization sponsors every year, where they help members who are able to attend in person in Madison connect with their representatives and talk about the school district the school board. Talk about statewide school board priorities for the budget.
I was going to say, I believe that David Keckle, I think that Carl did that 2 years ago. And so it was a very helpful person experience. Jamie developed with the legislature and discussed things.
And if you register for that, I believe they help you make appointments with your representatives and get you in front of those folks, as well as other people, including presumably the Joint Finance Committee members, and also provide you with talking points. Yeah, as needed. I don't know, question or discussion regarding legislative advocacy? Yeah, video? Yeah. Yeah, that might be something that's worth sharing out with the video regarding the budget process. Do you think? Yeah, I don't know, yeah.
With who?
The public?
Like an email all parents or Facebook.
Yeah, maybe more like social media posts. Or blog posts. Maybe as once listening session dates get scheduled, something could go on a blog post. Just a thought.
Would the board maybe want to put together some sort of advocacy statement for the budget? Some, I mean, I'm happy to do it.
Maybe we should do that. So next week is the convention.
Yes.
And presumably there'll be lots of presentations there about what WASB and other districts are doing for advocacy, and we'll probably all learn a lot there. Maybe the meeting after that, I'm busy the agenda. We've been putting these on the regular board meeting, just recurring decisions on how to make a statement or a path forward basically with the convention for that. Be reasonable.
Yeah, usually there's a convention debrief
Yeah.
at the board meeting that can be part of that as well.
Yeah.
Oh.
Does that make sense that folks would revisit legislative advocacy after the convention and talk about or potentially putting together an advocacy statement regarding the budget? Yeah. Okay.
And I'm happy to help. I'm happy to do it. I just based on your role. I think that
Yeah, that makes sense. Alright. the next item, we have items related to next meeting dates for committees and reports. January 16th, we have the Health Medical Committee meeting at the ASC. Also, January 16th is Ranger Night at the elementary school. There is no school January 20th. I'm sorry, no school for students. There's a staff PT day on January 20th. January 22nd to 24th is the State Education Convention. That's been referenced several times. And we have our special board meeting January 27th. We will be meeting that night at the middle school commons. And then there's additional committee meetings in February. Just quick note, there's no school for students and staff on February 7th. And another professional development day, February 10th. Yes,
Speaking of the convention next week, I apologize for already this, but usually you have the like, when you type in the sessions you went to, then you're not going.
Yes, I'll have that for you.
Okay.
Yeah, and Eric is gonna be there, so he's gonna, I know that everyone's busy, but he's gonna arrange, a board, dinner one.
Oh, great.
Board dinner.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
so everybody will send you 9 different restaurants. Yeah.
Yes. I'll give him all your stuff.
So fun.
All right. Other questions or discussion about items related to next meeting dates or committees and reports? All right. We do that. All right, so we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, it's gonna adjourn. Thanks everybody for being here. Oh, and